So anyway, let's talk about the earliest charging systems. Not the earliest, those are the 3-brush dynamos with a cutout. But starting around 1939 or so, and certainly after the war with most of the cars that we have, TCs, right through the, I want to say the midgets ran a generator through about 68, 69. They didn't go to an alternator as quickly as MGB did, which was 1968. But we're dealing with that generator and regulator, although the proper name for the regulator is a control box, because it doesn't just regulate, it also connects the battery to the charging system or disconnects it when the car is off. So it's really the control box. So there are really only four things in that charging circuit. There's the battery, the wiring, the generator, and the control box. So if the generator is bad, you can find out, well, I'll tell you how to test it here in just a second. If that's bad, then you go, oh, that's it. And you put another generator in, you get yours rebuilt, and it still doesn't work. Well, that's because the generator went bad because the regulator's bad. So sometimes you have to change both at the same time. Now, there's been about a year here that the control boxes, the 5-post control boxes, have not been good. A lot of people had a lot of problems with them, but the suppliers now say that they're all run through a test and adjusted under load, and that makes them good, where the earlier ones, sometimes the cutouts would stay closed when you turn the car off, and the battery discharges through the generator, so it burns up the generator, the regulator, and the wiring. So real trouble there. My suggestion to everybody is, if your generator's bad, find a local repair shop and have it fixed. If you can't do that, then you got to buy a new one. But the quality of a local rebuild, a lot of rebuilders cut their teeth on Lucas. The quality of a local rebuild usually is better than something that you can buy from our favorite country. So anyway, if you're when the charging system is working correctly, you turn the key on, the red ignition light comes on, start the car up, and when you exceed 800,000, 1200 RPM, that light should go out, not glow, but just go out. It winks out just over a very short span, 50 RPM or something. All of a sudden, it's just plain out. So if the light doesn't come on when you turn the key on, then you've got to figure out what the problem is there. If it comes on when you turn the key on, but does not go out when you're running down the road, or glows, then something's wrong with the generator and or the regulator, or very rarely the battery. So to test the generator and the wiring going from the generator to the control box, the easiest way to do this is on the 5-post control boxes, is to withdraw the brown with green wire off the F terminal. F is for field. And withdraw the heavy gauge yellow wire off the D terminal. D is for dynamo. So you start the car up, bring it up to 1500 RPM, either just run the idle adjuster screws up or something. Put those two wires together for a second, no more than a second, and then break it apart. And either you get no spark, or you get this huge, massive, flashy spark. Wow, it's like the 4th of July. So it either works or it doesn't work. Of course, that's not 100% of all the cases. Sometimes there's some weird stuff. It only sparks a little tiny bit, something. But generally, it either works or it doesn't work. If it works, the generator's good. If you get the big spark, the generator's good. Therefore, the control box must be faulty. If the generator doesn't work, then at least the generator's faulty, And maybe the control box is bad too. It's hard to test a control box, except by substitution. Before you do anything, make sure that your fan belt is tight. Make sure that the spade terminals or the ring terminals on the back of the dynamo are on and tight. Fan belt, that. Your battery clamps are tight. And then you can always polarize it. It's cheap, it's easy. So on the 5-post control boxes, all you need to do is take a penny or a screwdriver, it's a pencil, but a screwdriver, anything, and flash between 2 posts. They're right next to each other, A and F. Just flash on there, spark, spark, that's all you gotta do. And then the generator starts to make electricity in conformity with how you've got the battery hooked up. Doesn't matter if it's positive earth or negative earth, but by polarizing the generator, you don't polarize the control box, even though I'm telling you to do it at the control box. You're not polarizing the control box, that's just stupid. But the generator either makes electricity with a positive ground or a negative ground. And by polarizing it, you control that. Usually, when you start the car up and if it's not polarized correctly, the battery, which has just got an enormous amount of energy in it, will flip the generator by itself, but sometimes not. When it doesn't, and the cutout points close, then you've got a dead short with plus coming up one way and minus coming up the other. It's a 24-volt dead short. And it'll wreak havoc with a control box or the wiring. So anytime you take the battery out of the car, anytime, and put it back in, just spark it. Now the MGBs with the 3-bobbin, the longer control boxes with the rectangular covers that don't come off easily, those are harder to polarize. It's not complicated, it's just harder. In this case, you go down to the generator itself, withdraw the brown with green, and take a jumper wire and go from something hot, like the fuse box or the solenoid, and spark it against the spade terminal on the back of the generator. Again, that polarizes the field, and the generator will start to make electricity in conformity with the battery. And when you're checking the generator on a MGB with a 3-bobbin, you can't take the brown with yellow and the brown with green off the control box, because a lot of them are in a plug. You can take them off, that's handy. But if they're in a plug, then just go down to the generator itself, and all you need to do is take a jumper wire and go from one terminal to the other. You can't, if you pull the wires off, theoretically, you can't get them back on backwards, because one spade is a Lucar connector, which is, oh my gosh, almost a ½ inch wide, and the other one's just a normal spade connector. So you don't have to worry too much about paying attention to where the wires go. You should always do that, of course, but you can't get them on wrong. So that's about as easy as it is. We talked about batteries last time. We talked about batteries a lot last time. I was really surprised that a lot of people had a lot of comments about batteries and so forth. Since I haven't been working every day with customers and MGs every day like I was until about 5 years ago, you start to slip out of what's going on. And the parts supply, for instance, I haven't a clue what's available. I know pedal pads for MGBs aren't available from one of my suppliers, because I tried to order those the other day, but I don't know if the larger supplier has them or not. So anyway, that's my comment about that. I'm going to ask for Keith Ansel. Keith, are you on yet? Someplace from Portland, Oregon, Keith. So. Well, I'll pretend to be Keith. Okay, so come to the Portland, Oregon show. It's Labor Day weekend. There is a website. It's the Portland All British Car Meet. They expect to get maybe 800 vehicles, just a one-day show. I haven't been there before. I don't know how extensive it is. I don't know if they have awards and places, and some one-day shows have it really, really well organized and they get it knocked out without a problem. I just don't know, but I know there's going to be everything there from mini mokes, probably to Lotuses, to Rolls Royces, to, you know, Dr. Shepard's Aston Martin or something, and a whole field of MGs. Almost always at British Car Meets, the MGs make up, if not the majority, certainly the plurality of the cars that are there. But at the Altoona event, there are often a few more Triumphs than MGs. So I need people to go to that Altoona event with their MGs. Anyway, that's the scoop. If you got any comments during the time that we're doing the chat, just break in. We're going to run from now until 10 o'clock. I got to shut it off at 10. I got to get some shut. I got stuff going on tomorrow. We usually drift over. Last time we drifted over almost an hour, but tonight I want to keep it right to 10.
So John.
Hey, John. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is Jim. Thanks for the plug.
Jim Pastor, here we go. All right, Jim, okay.
I wanted to tell you, I needed a generator for a 63 Sprite, Rock Auto, $35 delivered with a 2-year warranty.
All we have to do is come to Altoona to Rock Auto.
So John, I was going to talk to you about Portland.
Yes.
Okay, so my wife and I have gone to Portland for years and years. And one of the things that brings us there is not only the cars, but the racing. So there's vintage racing the whole weekend. So it's Saturday, Sunday, and there's a swap meet, a lot of parts. And it's probably like you said, it's 800 cars. It's always, you'll see stuff you've never seen before. Every year there's guys that bring stuff and cars for sale. It's a really, really good meet, and we'll see you there.
Thank you, very kindly. I did forget to mention PIR, Portland
International Raceway. It's at the Raceway.
Yeah, and it's right next to the Portland Airport, just south of the river. So very easy to. Because I tell people I've got a friend who lives in Vancouver.
Ask a question.
Yeah, hang on just a sec. I tell people that I've got a friend that lives in Vancouver, and they go, well, yeah, that's British Columbia, but Vancouver's across the river from Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington. So anyway, okay. Who just broke in? Milton, was that you?
That was me, John. Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You know, with regard to generators, people say, says check the brushes every once in a while, and I think it's every 6,000 miles or something like that, or maybe it's 12,000 miles. And I want to know if there's any magic in taking the brushes out and checking them and making sure that they have the right tension. If you could comment on those two topics, that'd be great.
Okay, so first of all, anytime you're oiling your car, anytime you're changing the oil, you drain the oil out and you put a new filter in, you put new oil in the car, and that's the perfect opportunity, because you got it jacked up a little bit usually, is to put oil in the shocks. Just check the front shocks on your car, A's, B's, midgets, not C's. They don't have a shock you can fill. And grease the front suspension, and also take your oil can and put it in a little tiny hole on the back of on the drive end, the CE end of the generator, the commutator end, and there's a little hole there that says oil. So put a couple of squirts of oil in there to keep that rear bushing well lubricated. Now, anytime you have the generator off the car, why would you have the generator off the car? I don't know. Change the motor mount, do a clutch. I don't know, some reason. Then that's a perfect opportunity to take a look at the brushes. Most people just wait until there's a problem, and there usually isn't a problem. It's like, when was the last time you really wore out your brake pads on your TD or on your MGA? You know, they don't wear out much because the cars don't get an awful lot of use. But all the energy that's made in the generator has to pass through those brushes. And they're running all the time, not like on a cheese grater, not that rough of a surface where it chops away at the carbon, but absolutely it does. And the brushes start off rectangular. They start off rectangular, they start off square. And the more they're worn, the more rectangular they get. And then they also sit on an angle. They don't, when they're fresh, you know, the top and bottom are parallel, but as it wears, the things ends up sitting on the side. And I've never had an issue with the spring tension. There are different coil springs. Those coil springs are different on starter motors. They're very, very strong on those, and they're much lighter on the generators, because the duty cycle on the generator is as often as the car is running, and the duty cycle on that starter motor is rare, you know. So the brushes have a lot more tension on the starter motor. And you can still buy the brushes, get some brushes. You can do that. You can take the generator apart yourself, as long as the rear bushing hasn't been completely destroyed, or as long as the regulator hasn't allowed the generator to overheat and throw the solder out of all the soldered connections between the windings and the commutator. You can fix them. You can even fix them if it's throwing the solder out, but oh my gosh, you gotta be really good. And at that point, it's better to take it. And like Jim Pastor said, you know, what'd you say, 35 bucks at Rock Auto? You know, so
it was $35 free shipping, and I had it in like 2-3 days.
okay.
And it has a 2-year warranty.
Is that original? Does it say Lucas? It's in a rebuilt one?
It was rebuilt Lucas, yeah.
Okay.
And John,
on my website too, I've got a guy in PA. I think he's in PA. I don't know if he's still in business for sure, but he trades under the name of AMFOR, AMFOR, American and Foreign, and he does just a beautiful job rebuilding starters, alternators, generators, and so forth. And you can find his name on my website under suppliers, resources, something like that. That was a long answer, Milton. Sorry to take up so much time. So, okay, so we've got.
you know, just as a sort of an aside, John.
Did you have something else, Milton? Like our connection isn't great all the time. You're frozen on the screen, Milt. So yeah, we'll come back to you. Anyway,
I have a comment about the Chinese generators that Rock Auto sells. I couldn't resist. They had them on sale for $19. I had to pay the shipping on that one though. They are made in China. Here, I'll show you a picture of the box. Called Pure Energy. Definitely made in China. A friend of mine who's a well-known mechanic here in San Diego is now retired, but he said, yeah, when they work, they're great. Brand new ones, put them on the car. Sometimes they don't work. But I figured for 19 bucks, I could use some parts.
For 19 bucks, you can buy 2 of them for what Jim paid almost for what Jim paid the 35 bucks for his. So I'm always I like to see original stuff on the car. I like to see the original. You know, why not just put a GM alternator on there? I mean, come on. You know, you want it to work, just put a GM alternator. You can do anything to it, dead short it, and it still works. But then it's not really an MG, you know. So anyway, thanks, Pat, about that.
John.
Yes.
This is your brother-in-law's brother-in-law.
Yes. Peter.
Remember?
Yes.
An observation with a question. I've got 2 classic Land Rovers as well as my MG that I've had for 30 years. But my Land Rovers I had recently, I brought over from the UK, rebuilt them, blah, blah, blah. They didn't start very well until I put high torque starter motors on. Now with a diesel with a compression ratio of 21:1, it's a little bit different, obviously. But do you have any feedback on high torque starter motors for MGs? Because they seem to be getting a lot of publicity right now online.
The starter motors, I mean, hey, they're great. They're absolutely great. The old-fashioned starters, the crash styles, start to turn, and then catch the ring gear. So they always grind the ring gear at the point of starting. There's always wear on the ring gear. The high torque starters are pre-engaged, which means the gears fit together and then start turning. The same idea from 1968 onwards on the MGCs. Midgets always used a crash style starter. The high torque starters are smaller. They are more powerful for their size, certainly. Some of them, there's an issue about getting at least in the past, I don't know about today, but there's a problem with getting the battery cable to them. Just it's shy by something stupid like a half an inch or an inch. So how do you take care of that? That's a hassle. And then I had another guy tell me one time that he was happy with his high torque starter until he snapped the spring clips off his distributor, and one of them fell down and landed on top of the cable from the starter motor, which of course incinerated that strap pretty quickly, turned it red hot and then burned it up. You can't grab it. Of course, he should have had a protective boot on it to keep that from happening. But really, and then the noise that they make when they start, I mean, it sounds like a Toyota or something. So anyway, those are the only downsides, and those are very few indeed. So I know an awful lot of people opt to go to that high torque starter when their original Lucas starter has failed, and they've gone to Napa or something or other and bought another one. And I don't know where those things are rebuilt commercially, but some of them aren't a very good rebuild. I'm always a believer in going to your local rebuild shop and getting, if you want the original starter. I mean, they're all date coded. I mean, if you're out on the field and you got a 1963 MGB, you can't have a starter motor that says it was built 164. Come on, the date code has to be right. So, if you're all excited about that kind of originality, you have no option but to get yours rebuilt. But
I think the conclusion is it's a good solution for a high compression diesel,
yes,
all the car, but for an M, keep it to spec. Yeah,
it's real. They're real nice. What are we got before I go off on Skip and talking to him about his squealing brakes? Do we have any more comments about regulators or generators?
John, have you had any experience? There's a lot of aftermarket people selling, particularly for TDs and maybe for the others as well, transistorized or electronic. I don't know what's inside the box, but magic black box that's in the same Bakelite case that your regulator came in. So on a cursory glance, it looks original, but it supposedly is foolproof, smoother. Instead of being on, off, it kind of smooths it all out. Mine works. It's worked for 10 years now, but it's always been sort of a magical thing. Not transistor. I'm talking about the old style, the coil. So I'm not going to replace it. I'm of the 8 broke, don't fix. But I'm wondering if I ever had to, would you consider those?
Sure. You see that improvement not only in the control boxes, but in the turn signal flashing units. The old ones that got double. You open up the box and you've got 2 double pole, double throw relays in there. It's all kind of cool with all these little blades that move and get a high resistance and so forth. And the new ones that are being sold are I just got little stuff in them. And then also the voltage stabilizer that they brought in around 1964 to stabilize the voltage going out to the temp gauge and the fuel gauge. Those are now got a Zener diode in them, which puts out a constant 10 volts. The old ones, the old voltage stabilizers, gave you battery voltage or not, battery voltage or not, battery voltage or not. And the battery voltage, of course, changes. If you're sitting still with your heater motor going and the car's spinning over, idling at 800 RPM, the wipers are going, the brake lights are on, and so forth, the voltage is pretty low. So it's going to, that stabilizer is going to stay closed longer. But over a period of time, say if you were to test it over a period of a minute, you'd find that on the average, is putting out 10 volts. Well, it's a mechanical thing, and I mean that fails too. So there's Zener diodes in those. So anyway, those control boxes, the only downside to those is they're polarized. That's it. I mean, you put your battery in backwards and that's it, they're gone. But you know, you have to be careful. The old coil wound, the old-fashioned ones, doesn't make a difference which way you put the battery in. They're happy to work either way. You know, there was a guy in New Hampshire doing those, and then he passed away. And now they're getting rebuilt in North Carolina, aren't they? Or South Carolina? There's a guy down.
North Carolina. Yeah, it's North Carolina. I've got his card, and I may buy one of these days. I hadn't thought about the polarity. I'm old school. I still run positive earth.
Won't work.
I can't see that it makes any difference one way or the other, so it isn't worth changing.
It isn't worth changing yet. But if you carry one, you could carry the new style or the old style. As long as you're carrying one, the old one isn't going to fail. The one that's in the car, you know. That's the rule, you know. So.
I have
John,
clarity
I have a
question.
question about polarization.
Or I'll get Pat and then I'll get Rich. Okay. Pat?
So this happened a few years back. I changed the polarity on a TD from positive to negative ground. Turned the battery around, polarized the generator, started up, ran it, it was fine. The next day, I came back to work and it wouldn't charge. The generator that I'd polarized the day before decided to switch back. Have you ever encountered that? The residual
I know inductance, so this must be reluctance, huh? Reluctance.
Well, it was residual magnetic field, I think, was, okay. I didn't completely erase it. I didn't change its memory.
Geez, once you repolarize it, and especially after you run it, you know, gosh, you'd think that it would stay that same way. But it's just soft iron's real stupid. I mean, they line up this way or they line up this way, you know? So I don't know. Rich Caldwell is the metal engineer. He's up next, so maybe he can give us some explanation. There's always mysteries. I've had people say, I did just what you said and I burned up my generator. And I feel guilty, but I always think in the back of my head that you must have done something wrong because those units are pretty durable and they're pretty stupid, and you just polarize them. The only other issue change, we talked about this last time, changing is that you get the reverse ammeter ratings. But then someone said when they wired the car, they got it wrong to begin with. So now it's right. So.
John, this is Greg. I have a question. I had a problem about a month ago, came back from clean, ran all the way back with the generator light on. So I knew I had problems with the regulator or the generator. I had two generators rebuilt and I had two brand new regulators or control boxes. I put the first control box with a brand new generator on. It ran for about 30 seconds before the light on the dash came on. I figured, I probably forgot to flash the generator from positive to negative. So I took the first generator off, put it on the shelf, brought the brand new second generator out, put a brand new control box on it. And I ran it for a half a day. We went on a drive, went about 40 miles, did fine. Came back, light came on, failed again. Do you have any idea what could have caused me to be losing 3 generators or 3 voltage regulators?
The source of the voltage regulators, they were just awful for a while. I think I've been assured that they are good now, but that's the only thing that I can think. I mean, there's only 4 things in the system, you know, the battery, the wiring, the generator, and the control box. That's it. Some of the new wiring looms, you got 2 wires. What are you running, Greg? A B or an A?
This is an A.
Okay, so once in a while, the bulb holder, I think maybe more so on the Bs or something, but there's the As. There's a short in them, and so the light will come on. The ignition warning light will come on, but that's only because the bulb's getting shorted to ground, and
Right.
and it is not accurately representing what's going on. The foolproof test is to loosen up one of the battery cables, so real easily, start the car up, turn the headlights on, crank it up to 1500 RPM and take the clamp off the battery to stay running or not. If it's not charging, it'll kill right there. So,
It kills. Yeah, it dies.
okay.
Yeah, I have a voltmeter on the car, you know, one of those aftermarket voltmeters I hang underneath the dash on one of the heater,
Mhm.
you know, that heat control screw. And it, you know, went from like 14 to 12. And I knew right off the bat it was running off the battery.
Right, right.
And I
Well,
just can't figure out why I'm going through so many of them. I mean, I had a shop here in Arlington, Texas that, you know, he rebuilt them. That's what he does for a living. He rebuilt, you know, I have rebuilt 4 generators. I've already gone through 3 of them. So I'm not sure I'm running. I did buy one of those electronic ones. They're about $170 for the control box. I'm gonna put
Okay.
that on next to see just what's going on. But
Okay.
I am perplexed. I just
Well-
don't know what's going on with this car.
Almost always when there's a problem like that, it's the control box. Because the generator, I mean, if your guy has been doing all the stuff he's supposed to, you know, it should work out fine. But I've talked to people who've changed one after the other, and one causes the other one to fail, and then they change that, and then that causes the other thing to fail, and it's back and forth a couple of times until you get sorted out. And of course, your checkbook keeps getting lighter throughout it. The worst way of diagnosing the problem is to buy new parts and throw them at it, hoping. But sometimes that's just where you are. You can always take your control box into your generator guy too, because he's got an old Sun machine probably,
Mhm.
that he can put that generator on and hook up your control box and see what's going on.
But
I
John,
did just that. He's got 2 of the generators that he rebuilt, and he's got both of the control boxes that have failed. So I
Okay.
haven't talked to him since, but in the meantime, I got the electronic one, and I just don't want to put it on and
Didn't
have
have a
it,
problem.
you know, and toast it right off the bat. You know what I mean?
So maybe take that to him, you know, and just say, hey, look, it's like my wiring looks okay, you know. It's
Yeah.
John, in the workshop manual for the TD, and I don't know if this applies to the A because I don't have the workshop manual for my A, but in the TD, it's got a step-by-step series where one of them is you got it on the bench and you run it like a motor. And that I guess that says, oh, well, all the wires are doing what they're supposed to do. And then another one of the tests, and I don't know these by heart, but you disconnect one of the control wires and run the car and watch the voltage rise. First off, I guess since these are the workshop manual, these are valid tests. Are you familiar with the ones?
Oh, yeah, but I don't know. They let some engineer loose writing that. In the end, you put a voltmeter between the fuse box and ground,
Right.
And you turn on the headlights and bring it up to 1500 RPM, and then you dial in the voltage with the headlights on. So there's a load on it, you know, and then you dial that into 14 volts. So that's a pretty fast, easy schmeezy way of doing it. But there is a long set. You got to make the mechanical settings first. But there's something wrong. There was something wrong with a lot of these more recent control boxes that came through the supply system. And again, the main supplier assures me that they're all being individually tested because they had such a return problem on them. And so many people were upset because it burned up the generator or the wiring or something or other. So.
John?
Wait, Dan, let me wait, because I told Rich Caldwell that I called him next, and now that's about 8 people. That was about 8 people ago. So Rich, are you still there? Yes.
Yes, thank you. Question had to do with polarity.
Yeah.
So on my 1600, I had 2 reasons not to really go from positive ground to negative ground. One of them was the Petronics unit I had in the dizzy. It was sensitive. I've gone back to points. So the only other reason I have now is the electronic fuel pump, the SU fuel pump. And the question I have is, it's polarity sensitive. And I don't know what that really means. I think it must mean that there's a diode in there somewhere. And if I take that out and just reverse unsolder that diode and turn it around, does that make it correct now?
If it's got points in it. So there's 2 types of fuel pumps. There's an 2 types of SU pumps. There's the point style and there's the electronic style that uses the Hall's effect to trip the diaphragm and energize the solenoid. So if it's a Hall's effect, you can tell instantly by taking it off, there's either points in there or it looks like the inside of the $6 million man. So if it's points, you can actually take that thing out and you put a condenser in there. I can't tell you how many farads it is. Barney's here. He can probably tell us. Barney's always on. He can tell us how many farads to put in there. But the old capacitors are bisexual. I mean, they'll work plus or minus. The diodes are far superior for assuring the longevity of the life of the pump. But again, all you do is hook it up backwards and there it goes. The diode's gone, and now the points are running without any protection at all, and they spark themselves to death at a much faster rate. But yeah, just switch that diode around.
Okay, that's it. Just unsolder it and resolder it. Thank you, sir.
Because one end's got a ring terminal and one end's got a blade, and the wires are about 3/4 of an inch long. Logistically, it's got. You can buy a new diode. You can buy the diodes, AZX something or other. I think so. You just get the proper one and just change it.
I want to tell you also the latest debacle on my twin cam. The guy who has the motor has lost the crankshaft timing gear. Can you believe that?
Jim Alcorn has another one. There's no question about that.
No, he does not.
Ooh.
Nor does Mr. Wood.
What about Andy York?
I don't know about Andy York. That's a good suggestion. I'm grabbing at straws there. I'm so upset about this. I can't hardly speak about it.
Yeah, well, you could have a new one made. Oh no, wait! You could buy another twin cam for that. Those are helical gears. Those are expensive.
They come in pairs too. There's numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh really?
Yeah. I've got to get up there and find out.
Well,
but
maybe, sometimes if you go in the shop, you got to keep from killing the guy, and he's got to keep from killing you. Maybe if you just look around the shop, you can see it if you know what.
Well, I intend to, but Even though vaccinated, I got the COVID a couple weeks back. So I got to wait till my voice is back to normal before I walk in anybody's place.
Okay. Call me tomorrow and I'll give you Andy's phone number.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, John, the other Rich here. with the
Yes.
general question. All right. So I got my MGA in 2008. The generator has never worked. I just recently got the car working again after about 2 years sitting. Actually, you used a lot of your videos for coaching, which was great. Anyway, it's running better than ever before. I mean, this thing is like a bat out of hell. But last Sunday, the day after I got it running, developed a bad rattle in the engine. I traced it down to the generator. Front bearing was completely torn up. So I rebuilt the generator. New bushing, new bearing, brushings where somebody had replaced them. They were in good shape. I ran the Lucas tests. Generator was running perfect. I calibrated the control box. The light went out. The ignition light went out for the first time ever. Next day, it came back on. So I ran the Lucas tests again. Generator is good. The regulator voltage the control box had readjusted itself to 2 volts cut in. So I then readjusted it back up and it was stuck at 12.5. I turned it a little bit more. Then the ignition light stopped working and now it's stuck at 16.5 volts at 3,000 RPM. I'm thinking maybe this control box is just bad and maybe it burned out the ignition light. Is that possible?
Well, it's usually, the ignition light has 12 volts that comes up to it or battery voltage that comes up to it, and the other side is ground. And so that's why it lights up. But when the generator starts to work, then you got 12 volts coming this way, and the difference in the voltage ends up being 0, and that's why it goes out. So for it to come on brilliantly, it's got to be usually a lot higher than 16. But sure, those lights, absolutely, you can burn that light out. It's just a 987 screw base, so it's a real easy bulb. You can go to Napa and buy those.
Oh, that's good. So I guess the question here though is the control box, right?
The control box.
Either replace it with an original style or a solid state, or maybe even convert like to a stealth alternator. Any suggestion?
Something I run a generator on my MGA. Run it a long time. Greg Hoffmarter in Texas runs his MGA with generators. You can't. You have to drive over 45 in Texas. You can't get anywhere. So, they get the generators. I mean, we won World War II with generators. So there's nothing intrinsically wrong with generators. It is old school, but so are we, and so are our cars. So yeah, you get another control box. Do you have a shop around you, Rich, that will rebuild the generator or test it? You got a shop around that does that kind of work?
I mean, it's right behind me. I tested the generator. The generator is great shape. It's a voltage regulator, which is.
Then a new control box ought to work it just fine. There are mechanical settings for a control box, and I'm not sure those mechanical settings are in the workshop manual, but they are in the Glenn's section in the Glenn's All Foreign book. If you want to contact me tomorrow, I'll take a scan of those. You want 10,000s between this and 15,000s here, and
they're in the Haynes manual.
Okay, all right.
Well.
Okay.
But it's just weird because it went to 12.5 and then it went to 16. Now it's stuck at 16. It kind of seems like the voltage regulator is.
Well, remember that the voltage regulator won't work if it's not grounded. And I mean, how can it not be grounded? But I mean, all kinds of stuff can happen. So you can always add just an extra ground wire, just an alligator clip to something that's grounded, and put it on the E terminal on the control box and see if there's any difference. There should not be a whit of difference at all. If there is, something's wrong with your ground.
Yeah, the ground is good. I think there's a test in the Lucas manual for this. It says connect 1 lead of voltmeter to terminal A, the other terminal E, and if you get the battery voltage, your ground is good.
Right, except a voltmeter draws no current. And I mean, the control box, the two bobbins in there hardly draw any current either, but they draw a lot more current than a voltmeter does. So I'm a firm believer in using a test light for work, for wiring problems, because Calvin Dodd at Moss says he's got a headlamp with two wires on it. I mean, that draws a lot of current. I mean, either you got power there or you don't, but with a voltmeter, you can get a reading, but then as soon as you try to draw a load across it because of high resistance, it won't work. So anyway, all you need is a pair of alligator clips and go from a ground to the E terminal on it, and it shouldn't make any difference. So.
Got it. All right.
John, I have a question on that. I installed an ammeter temporarily to see what's going on in my A, and I noticed it really doesn't start charging until I exceed about 1500 RPM. Does that make sense?
Sure. That's why they went to the alternators.
Yeah. Okay. So I just gotta stay on the road, I guess.
You just have to get enough RPM, to get that whole system to work. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
John,
Can I pop in with a question?
Yes, Jennifer.
Thanks. So I'm in the Cleveland MG Club, and I've got a generator that I'm pretty sure is dead or has some serious problems because it hasn't been charging the battery. I went through your test last weekend, did the spark test. There was no spark. I found a Moss video that gave two different bench tests. One bench test has got me a bit stumped. It seems very simple. You take the belt off. I mean, they call it a bench test, but you can do it in the car. Take the belt off.
To see if it motors?
Yeah, to see if motors. So basically taking the DNF terminals off, putting the jumper between the two. And then it says to take a jumper lead and connect that to the brown wire that feeds the voltage regulator. That's exactly what it says in the video. All my wires are brown. There's 60 years of dirt and grime on every wire.
Hot. You got to find something hot, either off the starter switch or off the A or A1 terminal on the control
That's what
box.
I figured, that it was probably A or A1. Would either of those work?
Yeah, that or even the fuse, the bottom fuse in the fuse box.
Okay, all right. I just didn't want to start touching things randomly. So, okay. So that's the last test I have to do, but the other ones, the voltmeter test on it that I did came back at like under 1 volt. So I don't think it's looking good.
If you put a voltmeter between the D terminal and ground and run the engine with the wires off the back of the generator, there's enough residual magnetism in the generator to produce somewhere between 1 or 2 volts coming out of D. That's all. But the trick is, that's what the control box does. It takes that 1 or 2 volts and feeds it back into F, which makes the field magnet stronger. And then you get 4 volts out of D, and then they put that back into the field, and you get 8 volts out of D, and they put that back in, and whoa, a little too much. And so it vibrates at, they hold the voltage. The voltage regulator is normally closed, sending the power, the voltage that's made at D back into F. And when it comes up with that spring tension inside the control box, it starts to vibrate about 60 times a second. And that's why these guys are talking about how much better the electronic control boxes are, because Zener diodes hold it steady and it's not a mechanical switching.
Yeah.
But that works. So.
Okay, thanks.
John, Dan Howard here.
Yes, sir.
A cautionary tale: generators are fine things, but on 67 and earlier MGBs, if you get talked into putting air conditioning on them and try to use the generator, you can find yourself stopped beside the road because the blower for the AC, the fan for the AC, and the electric clutch for the AC compressor compressor pull more power than your little generator puts out. And you can completely exhaust the power in your battery, and suddenly your car doesn't work anymore. So I had to switch over to an alternator to make the system viable.
Understand. I understand. Sometimes when you're running along well, if you're running along and the car kills, the battery's really dead. But sometimes if you wait just a little bit, I don't know, how does the battery recharge itself? It doesn't make any sense to me, but I know this works. And then of course you can't use the starter motor if you just got to push. And the car by itself only uses about 3 amps to run down the road. That's all it takes to run the coil. And a little bit more on and off to run the fuel pump, as long as you're not using your lights and your wiper and your turn signals and your radio. And if you got a modern radio, you always know when there's a problem, because those don't fade away like old tube type radios did. They get quieter and quieter and quieter. They just shut off at about 11 volts. So anyway, Dan, thank you very kindly. If you've got an air conditioner in your, you must have a GT.
That's right. My wife claimed it was a toaster oven, not an automobile. So I put air conditioning in it for her.
I put air conditioning in my daughter's 72 MGB, but that came with an alternator, which, because of its position, then started to dig a hole in the underside of the bonnet on a cross support beam. I thought the gearbox was coming apart. I was so happy to find that the alternator was rubbing the underside of the bonnet. Oh my gosh.
Well, let me tell you, it took many, many hours of making and remaking brackets to get this whole damn thing to fit on a. The AC kits, some of them are made for later MGBs, but as you well know, the radiator neck moves from if you're looking at the engine, from the left to the right side on the later cars. And that's what the kits are made for. And trying to cram an alternator down into that hole, it took a lot of work, but I finally got it.
Great.
And my wife is happy. That's the most important
thing. Hey, life's a balance, you know? It's all a balance. So. I'm going to skip over to Skip, who asked me some questions about his brakes. So I don't know, Skip, you can unmute yourself and come on. But I think, but I've got to ask you about Keith Ansel. Keith, are you on yet? Did you find your way on? If you did, you can unmute yourself and talk a little more about Portland. But all right. So anyway, what's the best remedy for squealing brakes? The brakes squeal because the brake rotors glaze up. Real light use of the brakes glazes the rotors. So you can be more aggressive in your braking, but it's like you get used to braking the way that you want to do it. So brake pads make a great big difference, and there's lots of different brake pads out there. I'm a believer in Ferodo. That's an old-fashioned name. Ferodo pads, they don't seem to squeal much. All Girling brakes squeal. You listen to Healy's or even the MGAs, the twin cams that got Girling, well, Dunlop brakes, but Girling bought them out fast enough. All those squeal, and I don't know. It's the trick that we did at the shop was to take the brake pad out, clean the back of it with some carb cleaner so it's nice and clean. Take some duct tape. Here we go with the duct tape tricks. Put duct tape on the back of the pad, not the friction side, of course, on the back of it, rub it on really hard, and then trim it with a single edge razor so that none of the tape goes around the edge of the pad. And just that little thickness of fabric in there and glue would reduce the amount of chatter that those pads do that causes that squeal. You can buy stuff to go on there. New pads, a lot of the new pads come already with some sort of goo on the back of it to reduce that. Some of the grilling brakes had intermediate, just a piece of metal. It was the same size as the pad, but went between the pad and the puck. Anyway, duct tape, that's what we scuffed up the rotors and scuffed up the pads with 100 grit paper and put duct tape on them, so.
Okay, that's good.
Now, let's see, Skip, you say you have replaced both rotors and calipers, bled the brakes excessively, got a good pedal, but at a stoplight, I can feel the pedal going down, but I can't find any leaks. Textbook case, faulty master cylinder.
Okay.
What year's your car?
63.
So you can buy kit, you can rebuild, you can put new rubbers on the master cylinder piston in place. Or if we want to be fancy and use Latin, in situ, that's what it was when I took Latin. Now everybody says in situ. But anyway, you need a pair of 90-degree snap ring pliers. It's kind of a bitch to do it, but it's easier than taking the whole master cylinder out. Now, can you buy I'm just unaware, can you buy a modern can brake that looks the same as that original one?
Yeah, you can, but it has a plastic reservoir. So
in that case, either just put the seals in, you'll find out fast enough if it's going to work. If you can look down the bore with a light and a mirror, et cetera, and if there's pitting on the bottom of the bore, then it's going to tear up a new seal pretty soon. I mean, the new seal will work for a while, but then that too will fail. And you can send that original master cylinder to a receiver. I send mine to White Post in White Post, Virginia. It's not inexpensive. They'll send you back just a whole rebuilt unit, but it still looks like your original rebuilt unit. It's not a brand new, nice tin can with fresh solder down the side of it. And of course, you can't plate them to make them look nice because they got solder in them, and the plating process burns the solder out.
So White
Post Restorations in White Post, Virginia. And their address is something like 9 White Post Drive. So they've got a website.
Okay.
A couple of $100.
All right, that's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
John, what? Apple squeeze them too.
Yes. Okay. So Pat.
No,
Pat says
Apple doesn't do them. Apple, I've tried Apple and they don't do them.
Really?
Yep. I have a couple of the tin can. I have a 65B and I want to restore the square can Lucas or the Lockheed unit, and they don't do it.
Okay. White Post will.
And John,
Talk to JR. Yeah, Tony.
they'll guarantee him for life.
As long as you don't use silicone fluid.
Exactly, because I did my C one about 20 years ago and it went bad again. And they did it for me.
It was this
That was
White
when the father
Post?
was still there.
This is White Post. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. White Post Restoration in Virginia. Got it.
Okay. Let's see, Rich. Okay. But Rich, you can, Rich S., you can unmute yourself and we can talk about your generator question.
Oh, we already did.
Oh, all right, good.
Thanks, John.
John, with
Tony.
with the control boxes, did you mention anything about cleaning the points?
No.
Because I had a new old stock one and I put it on, it didn't work. And I took it out and I ran some, wet dry sandpaper between it, worked fine.
That is, I thank you very much. As a matter of fact, when you buy them, they often say, clean points before using. So I just take the cover off and there's 2 bobbins and each bobbin has a set of points. The voltage regulator on the left is normally closed. So that's an easy one. Take a little piece of like 600 paper or something like that, and a strip that's a ½ inch wide and fold it over. So it's got sandpaper grid on either side. Open up the points, stick it in there and just drag it through. It's the same way you'd clean up points on a distributor. And then the cutout points are normally open, and you push the bobbin or the lever on the top of the right-hand bobbin, and again, drag that through. Never, ever push that closed, the cutout, when it's all hooked up, because then the battery will start to discharge through the generator, and it'll burn the wiring up in the generator and the control box, and you haven't got enough strength to pull that lever off the bobbin. There's a lot of magnetism there, and then right away it gets real hot and you can't touch it. So, and by the time you get the battery disconnected, the damage has been done. So anyway, don't do that when it's hooked up. Just do it when it's off the car.
And if you have a wife or daughter with small fingers, it helps.
Maybe a daughter.
Yeah.
So Sears, you already talked about that. I'm reading here the questions on chat, but that's correct. About 1500 RPM. And Rich S, we already took care of you. Is that correct? I think we did. And Doug Miller. John, in Atlantic City, you diagnosed my intermittent starter issue as a dead spot on the armature. It only happened once since Atlantic City. Can I wait until winter to drop it and take it in to be fixed? Because waiting's not an issue. Sure, but you know what's going to happen tomorrow, Doug, now that we've talked about it. You're going to go out and it ain't going to work. But usually if you keep trying, it'll work it, so, you don't have to take the car off the road until it gets to the point where it becomes an issue. It's you can always push it to start it. My MGA still has a crank in the front. When my starter motor doesn't work, I can put a crank in it. So you can push it to starter, or usually if you just keep hitting the key, hitting it, it'll eventually go. So you sure, you can wait. The damage, I don't think will be any worse. So where are you from, Doug?
Holland, Ohio.
Hey, just down the road from Tony.
Yeah, unfortunately I see him from time to time.
Okay, and that's just a stone's throw from Grand Rapids, right?
Yeah.
Hey, watch it, Miller.
The other Grand Rapids.
John, put Tony on mute.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mike and Martha. What is the best way to add more amperage output? What do you recommend as highest before having to increase the wiring gauge? So, Mike, are you on right now? What this is an unusual. Most people don't have this kind of draw. Mike of Mark and Martha.
Hey, John, how are you, buddy?
Hey, great. So, what are you running in your car that you need all this amperage for?
Well, it's a 72B, still original, but one of the other fellows talked about air conditioning and some of the other issues there. So I wanted to know what the limit is as far as what you can add above and beyond the standard Lucas before you start needing extra capacity.
Well, it only depends on how much it actually has to charge. You can get a Saturn alternator. Those are pretty hot for, a hot setup. You have to take them apart and rotate the case 120 degrees or something to put in 100 amp alternators. Now, if it's going to charge at 100 amps, it'll toast your wiring, but it never is going to charge at 100 amps, not unless your battery's like flat dead or your battery's got a real problem with it and it starts to overcharge it or something. So I think the wiring in the car is just fine. What you might do, you should have on your car, maybe you got a 16 ACR alternator. You can jump it up to an 18 ACR. It has to do with the width of the stator. You can take a look at them, and I don't know how to do. I'll send you a picture of them if you email me. I just did a whole the history of the evolution of the Lucas charging systems. I presented that at Atlantic City, and I had took a lot of pictures of alternators. So So it sometimes it says on the alternator, but if it's been rebuilt, someone's thrown away the tag.
Right.
You know.
This was probably still original. I bought it from the original owner. He had it for 37 years and I've been driving it about 6 or 7. So pretty low changeover on parts in it.
So just offhand, it's probably a 16 ACR. I don't think they went to the bigger ones until around 75. I don't think they did, but you can put one of those in with no problem at all.
Well, one last question. What's the difference in amperage between a 16 and an 18?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 10 amps.
That's pretty good.
The generators max out at about 25. And I think the alternators start at about 30 and then the other one's 35. I don't know.
Okay. Well, next time you talk to your nephew, I don't remember his name, but ask him if he remembers meeting MG Nutt at Lookout Brewing in Black Mountain about 3 years ago.
Whereabouts?
Lookout Brewing in Black Mountain, North Carolina. I met your nephew here. I pulled up my MG about 3 years ago. We started talking in a small world. He said, well, John Twist is my uncle.
Oh, a biker?
No, I don't remember what he had.
That's the only nephew I got who would have been there. He would have been there on a motorcycle, and
Probably, yeah.
He looks a lot like me. So
Yep.
Yeah, that was Cabe. Yeah, I saw him yesterday. We dressed him up one day in my hat and glasses, and everybody just screamed with laughter because he's just funny how that genetic stuff works. You know.
Well, it's a small world.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, John, about those 100 amp alternators. I get mine from Ed Maddock. He does the turning and all that. And I've been running them for 12, 14 years and no problem. The only thing now is I know how my headlights are supposed to look.
So this guy's name is Ed Maddock, M-A-D-D-O-C-K?
Yeah, it's he does the 1, 2, 3 ignitions, M-A-D-A-K.
M-A-D-A-K. And how do you find him on the web?
Is I think his latest website, he's changed it. It was Paradise Parts, but I think it's now 1, 2, 3 Ignition.
1, 2, 3 Ignition. Where is he?
He's in Columbia Station, Ohio, right next to Strongsville.
Okay, all right.
And, he drives an MGC, and he's been selling ignition systems. He's been selling alternators, all sorts of things like that, and not just for British cars, but for anything.
Okay.
But that alternator, it works great. I mean, I have had no problems with it at all.
It's approximately the same size as the Lucas one, isn't it? I mean, it's a little bigger, but.
Yeah, you just have to twist the body, like you said, like halfway around or a third of the way, and then he also supplies the proper end on it for our V belts.
Hey.
And it, like I said, it works great. And because I've got Cruise, I've got of course the stereo and all the other stuff, and I need something better. I one time my alternator went out and I got a alternator off of a midget from a guy at Heartland Regional, and everything was fine, worked fine, but I'm going down the highway at night, got the wipers going, blower motor going, cruise controls on, listen to the radio. I turned my turn signal on and the cruise shut off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got a better alternator.
John, before you leave that subject, if you don't mind, I just because I thought they looked cool, put a pair of 7-inch, one's a driving light and one's a fog light, on the badge bar on the front of my TD. Changed everything in the TD to LEDs, so the real headlights and taillights draw virtually nothing. But those two old 7-inch driving lights, according to the ammeter, draw about 20 amps. And yeah, and the of course the generator is I guess maxes out about 25. I only turn them on for show anyway. I never drive at night, but I'm just curious if I'm drawing that much amperage for any period of time out of that generator, am I doing any harm to the generator? Can it handle it? Am I overloading it?
That 5-post control box has an attempt. in it for current regulation. By the time we get to the MGB with the 3 bobbin box, that's got a current regulator in it, so the generator won't overcharge. But that's the problem that happens, is that if it's working too hard, the armature starts to warm up and it finally hits the melting point of solder and blows the solder out of the between the windings and the commutator segments. So you can't overheat it by putting too much of a load on it for too long. I mean, the regulator is supposed to prevent it, but you know, it's all electromechanical stuff, and it all comes down to it. Maybe I don't know if these electronic control boxes also include a current regulator to make sure that you aren't charging it more than, I don't know, 25 amps, you know, but still under long use, you know, stuff gets really hot. So
I'd love to find LED bulbs for these, but I haven't found any that work. But again, I think they look cool. They're just for show. I don't drive at night, but thank you.
Thank you.
John, battery
Yes.
drain. Battery drain. For all the British cars that I had when I lived in Britain, I never ever had a problem with battery drain. I've had a problem with battery drain on my Mark II Mini, my MGB, and my 67 Mustang. And I know how to diagnose them, but they're pretty frightening problems when you're a long way from home and the next morning you're stuck and you gotta. Is it because those cars I had in Britain weren't very old when I owned them, whereas they're old and more deteriorated over here? But it's a spooky problem when you're away from home, right?
Yes. Modern radio. I mean, I just tell you,
no radios.
Well, good for you. So how can there be a drain? How can there be a drain? It doesn't make any sense. I mean,
Well, when I take the battery lead off and do the light test, there's a drain, and it's happened at various times on each of the cars, and I'm thinking, But
well, the only thing, you know, the only thing that's hooked up live is on all of our cars. I don't know anything about your other car, the Mustang, whatever it was.
Well, the Mini.
But the purple circuit is always hot. So the purple circuit runs interior light. Well, you know if that's on, but it runs a trunk light on a lot of the cars too, and the trunk light can stay on, and that'll drain the battery.
So my question basically is, have I just been unlucky, or is it a relatively chronic problem in the US with older cars? I don't think so, no?
No, I don't think so. It's just, Peter, if it wasn't for bad luck, you wouldn't have any luck at all, you know? So actually it has to do with our position on the globe. So if you hook up a test light between the battery and ground, then the test light lights up. Oh my gosh, you got a tremendous draw. So then the question is why? So you pop out the
fuses one by one and all that.
Yeah, and see what happens. Unplug the alternator and see what happens there. And it's always something. Has to be something.
Yeah. And I fixed them, but they occurred when I was a distance from home. That's all.
So last time we had this, you know, people were talking about those things that are, you know, that twice the size of a pack of cigarettes, that, you know, that have enough energy in them, lithium batteries in them, enough energy in them to go through 3 or 4 start sequences, you know, where you're running the starter motor for 10 seconds. Absolutely amazing. I don't know what those things cost or how safe it is to have one in your glove box, but if you put one in there, do lithium batteries discharge? Lead acid batteries discharge by themselves. They don't keep a charge forever. So I don't know, but yeah.
Mine holds a charge for at least a year.
Yeah. I agree.
How much do those cost?
Sorry?
$90.
The little charger, the little.
I think it was around $90.
Okay.
It was in that range.
Okay.
I bought 2 more.
The problem is not the battery or the charge or whatever. It's the fact that the reservoir of the system is draining and you stay in a hotel overnight and the next morning you can't start your car, or you leave it for a week and it doesn't start. And when you fix it, it's good for 3 months. It's just, it's simply a drain.
I'm staying at the wrong hotel.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, I don't have much of an answer for you, Peter. It's just one of those, you know, just, it's your good luck, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
okay, thank you.
all right, Bob, I purchased a Plinkington Triplex B Roadster windscreen only to find it doesn't fit my 63 frame. I obtained a 66 frame and it fit the contour perfectly. Records don't show any changes in the frame or glass. Somewhere I heard the laminated glass started in 65. Can you shed any light on this? Well, the short answer is no. I thought all the windscreens were the same. Some windscreen frames get tweaked, you know, that leaned on, bent on, the collisions. So everything's a compound curve. It's really hard to tell. But I didn't, that doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know. Anybody have any comments about windscreen, except that most of the windscreen glass you buy right now doesn't fit, but you just have to be so careful about it.
I had the same problem with when I was buying. Hello, everybody. Greeting from Mexico. When I was buying the car and I was looking for a windshield, I found a frame of a 65, which is the year of my car, and then I was looking for the glass. So I went to check Pilkington. I guess it was the brand. I'm not sure, and it didn't fit also. Finally, at the last resource I had to put a 70 something windshield, and I had the same problem. I didn't find it.
Okay. I'm just, I don't.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bob in
Yeah,
Marietta,
yeah.
Georgia. So it's clear that the two frames are not the same.
Okay.
I mean, you know, an aluminum extrusion really doesn't bend. They'll break, but they won't bend. You can look at the two next to each other and see that the contour is different. And the same with the glass. The contour is clearly different. The thickness is exactly the same. And yet, you know, the windshield fits perfectly down the center of the extrusion on the one and not on the other. So I just thought, you know, it's a mystery.
It is. I've got my factory parts book, but it's in the other room.
When did they change? When did they change your process?
You guys talk. I'm gonna get my factory parts book.
Okay, well, that's my question. Did they in fact change it?
Not in the book, at least.
Yeah,
Yes.
Also,
they just neglected to tell us.
When
we went to buy a new windscreen frame at Team Triumph, we went through he had a box of used side pillars and everything. And there were some that looked different than others.
There were
And
slight
they were
differences.
all MGB and didn't have the years on them, of course, but there were slight differences. So we went through them all and picked out the two best ones. And fortunately, they
We
fit.
found
Found the
ones
right
that
ones.
fit.
Oh, well, of course, I've got the mechanical service parts list because I'm a mechanic. This doesn't have the body in it. So I don't, I'm sorry. I was gonna use my, anyway, I'll see if I can have an answer next time. So.
Thank you.
Hey, John, I have that
Hey,
website for Ed Maddock,
Oh, yeah.
and he's got a section for British cars. It's 123ignitionusa.com.
123ignitionusa.com.
Yeah,
And the 123 are Arabic numerals.
Yes.
yeah,
which is 1, 2, 3, yes. And yeah, he's good. He's good. He's honest. I've been friends with Ed for 30 years or so. In fact, I'm the reason he owns an MG now.
Hey,
So,
great,
I did one good thing for him.
great.
So John, before I jump off, I just wanted to add a quick plug that Caffeine and Octane Atlanta is having British Car Show Day on the 1st of August.
Okay.
So, hopefully the Peachtree MG Club will have a big turnout for that. And of course, they film everything. It'll be on Facebook and YouTube. And then on September the 4th is the Atlanta British Motor Car Fair. And this year it's going to be at the Tellus Museum in Cartersville, Georgia. And there's normally at least 400 cars there of all types.
Okay, is there a website that people can hit? You got a web page or something, or a Facebook page for Peachtree?
Well,
If somebody wanted to go on the web and find it, or just Google British Car Show Georgia.
yeah, just Google British Car Show, and it's TELLUS Museum.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying something.
John,
Google Peachtree Car Club.
Yeah.
And you'll get it. It's got all
Okay.
stuff on. Excuse me.
It's peachtreemg.com.
What's that, Doug?
Peachtreemg.com.
Peachtreemg.com. Okay, all right.
John, for what it's worth, the Moss catalog for that windshield assembly does have one, none of them are available, by the way. One for up to car number 306515, and then a different one for cars after that. That might imply that there was a production change in that range. And that's all. That's what Moss says.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I'll take a look in the factory parts book too. But I only had the mechanical one up here. So okay, Dale from Windsor. When is that border gonna get open, Dale?
Not for a while yet.
Oh my gosh.
We can now eat on patios outside.
Oh my gosh, Australia is locked down something fierce right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I said before, I went through and got my Nexus card so I can go through the fast lane, and right after I got the card, can't use it.
Yeah. So here's my question, John. My 69, which is the car behind my head there, I lost the clutch last year after it only been in 2 years, and I figured the throw-out bearing probably failed, which it did. When I pulled the engine out, the throw-out bearing was totally destroyed, nothing left inside of the carbon. So I got a new one through Moss, through Jeff Zorn, obviously, and it came, the Moss part number, made in India. Everything looks good except the clip, the retaining clip to hold the shaft on, looks like this.
See, and there's a hole in the end of the axle of the throw-out bearing.
Yes.
That slips in. That's like an MGA style.
Okay.
Sort of.
Well, I tried everything. I couldn't get it to work, so I took the brass colored clips that you usually know that you slip in.
Yes.
And then turn it so it overlaps the top of the fork. I put that on instead, but I look, obviously you don't get any instructions. You look at the Moss catalog, there's nothing.
Well,
I checked MG Experience. So I'm just going to discard these, but it'd sure be nice if they told you how to put these things on.
Yeah. Yep. It would be nice. Well, it might be that fits a Sherpa van or something. I mean, that engine, that clutch was used on a lot of different vehicles.
Yeah.
So it might be that it fits something else, and that's that they're, they buy them, and they, as often as Kelvin Dodge comes to British car shows, one of the things he does is explains the great difficulty they have they'll get somebody and they say, well, yeah, we got all these parts. Sure, they fit MGBs, and here's the part number. And so they order them, they pay for them and order them, they get them, and they're not what they are purported to be. Sometimes they don't even know. They can't open up every box. They have been opening up every control box and testing it themselves.
Oh, maybe.
They have been doing that, but because they had such a problem with that. But
anyway, so I'm just going to use the old clips.
Yeah.
And then I also looked on MG Experience, and they talked about, well, maybe it failed because there's too much or too little play in the fork and all these. Did you check this and that and the other thing? Said no, everything's fine in my car down there. So it's just probably must have been a defective throat bearing.
So use lots of grease on that pivot. I mean, on the bolt and bushing.
Okay, I'll do that.
And certainly, once you put those clips on, then coat the release bearing fork and the axles on that throwout bearing with a lot of grease, and put it in, snap them over, wipe off the excess, and
okay, I'll do that.
The whole car loves grease and oil.
This time I just pulled the engine and I left the tranny in, because you can do it. It's just when you put the engine back in, it'll take 5 minutes or 5 hours, depending on your luck.
If you when you're putting that engine back in the car, you've got to have some way to move the engine so that you can run up parallel to the face of the gearbox. And if you get it parallel, as best
it'll
you
slip
can,
right in.
And have the car in gear, and have a 1 5/16 socket with a breaker bar or something on the front of the engine, so you can you don't have to move it half a turn. You just
and you're right. I've tried jacks underneath the transmission, the wheels up at a certain level, and the leveler on the engine hoist. And if you get it just exactly right, shoot, it'll slip right in. And if you don't, you need about 3 people and trying to get it get you right.
Well, after a couple of times, when you're really pushing, and it just you hit some level of frustration,
you pull it
out.
Yep, pull it all out.
Put your test your test first motion shaft in it again.
Oh, yeah.
Just to make sure that clutch is aligned. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I haven't seen those clips before. Okay, Bob N. Not a generator question. I have 15-inch wire wheels. Can I put them on my 69 Roadster, which currently has 14s? If yes, what tire size? So yes, you can put them on. You can put 15-inch wire wheels on, and some people think it makes it look a little nicer. You get a little more road speed per RPM. There's no problem as long as the tires are small enough. 175, 65, 15s, that would be just fine. So Rob, are you here?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, John.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm Rob. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. A fellow who gave them to me. He had them in storage for ages, and they're in mine. The gray paint is all flying off and stuff like that. But that's what I was wondering, is the splines are the same, aren't they?
Yes. And the only thing that might be weird is the offset. So because you don't know what they're from for sure. But MGA wheels, MGC wheels, and MGB wheels all fit back and forth without any problem.
Okay. It was on an MGC apparently.
Yep. Yeah, they'll be just fine. Yep.
Hey, John.
Yeah. Oh, David. Hey, David's on because because I moved the time. Thank you, David.
Now, the
Okay,
MG ski wheel is the same as the Healy wheel. So they're the same offset.
okay,
And then that throw up bearing, that is the same as the Healy and the Jaguar. That clip. They're just a pain in the ass to get in place.
okay. I had no idea.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
that's the only question I had. Yeah, normally I have a question for my 72 GT, but this was a question for my 69 Roadster, so
Yeah.
much appreciated. Yeah, so it will fit.
It'll throw your speedo off just a tiny little bit, but on my phone, the conflict in technology to have this sitting, between the seats, but I've got a GPS speedo on there, and and your speedo might be off anyway. Speedo, now the Odo will not be correct, but only
Okay.
big deal. So
Yeah, well, I was looking at the wheel sizes and comparing them, like the outside tire size, and comparing them to the 14-inch tire size. And if I get a smaller wall size, it seems that the RPMs per the rotation just really about close with those with the smaller wall tires, which I figured out was the 175 65 R15s, and that would be the same rotation. So I don't think it would affect the speedometer that much.
well, in 1965, was it, when they went from bias ply to radials on the MGB? They changed the speedo.
Yeah.
So it's just tiny. So it just 16-inch. I had a customer who absolutely had to have 16-inch wheels on his B. And last time I talked to him, or second to last time I talked to him a couple of years ago, he goes, "Yeah, that was a mistake." But the 15 inches are okay.
Tire Rack gives you all the information. If you go onto Tire Rack and go to the Vredestein tire sizes and the tire specs, they'll give you all of the rotations per mile for each tire.
Right. Yeah, that's what I did. I went on their site. Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I'm just talking about tires though. Of course, they're tube type tires, right? But they're all radials that are tubeless. Is there any problems at all putting tubes into a tubeless tire?
Well, there's ridges on the inside of the tire. There used to be two different types of tires: tube type tires and tubeless tires. And the modern tires, since no one even considers tubes anymore, there's ridges on the inside of the tire left over from the casting process. And those can and will abrade the tube and cause a pinhole. So the only thing you can do is get the heaviest duty tubes you possibly can, and make sure that your guy who's installing them uses lots of baby powder, and they inflate, or talc, whatever. They inflate the tube and then deflate the tube and shake it around and inflate it and deflate it, so there's no chance of the tube folding over on itself. And if you go to a motorcycle shop, they often, that's all they do all day is fit tubes onto. And I look at some of those Harley Davidsons. Those tires and wheels are as big as ours, or bigger. They're used to doing that stuff. So
yeah, that's the last time I had a flat, and I pulled it, got a new tube for it. That I brought to a motorcycle shop, and they put the tube in, lots of powder in there, and they knew what they were doing. So that's what I did. But I was just wondering, because I did hear a lot about the abrasion between the tire and the tubes.
David, David Knock, what's your comment about that, about the tubes?
Well, I've had the same issue. You just got to make sure most of your new wheels today are all tubeless, though. They've all been made to be tubeless.
And I've taken a lot of older rims and made them tubeless myself. All they do is line the spokes with silicone.
Yeah.
And so if you just take a bunch of silicone and line the inside of the rim across the spokes, make sure that the inside of the spokes are completely covered, you can convert a regular wheel to tubeless and not have a problem.
Does anybody?
John, back in the 70s when I was manufacturing Michelin tires in France, we were making tires, and we were making tubeless and tube type radials at the same time.
Right.
Tube type radials didn't have a butyl inner liner, so you could put the tube in to avoid getting air between the tube and the tire, and then getting granularity, and then messing up the tube, and then losing the whole thing. But with a spoke wheel, you're stuck with a tube, right? Whether you basically, but tube is a good idea with a modern radial tire, because of the reason of air getting between the tire and the tube when inflated. You can imagine what happens. You get that, and all hell breaks loose.
And the other thing that helps is
aren't there ridges on the inside of a tire too, on the inside of the construction? Aren't there little ridges from the manufacturing, the casting? I wonder if you go in there with a Dremel tool and a mask. We all have a mask. We got to do something with all those masks. And smooth those out. I don't know.
No. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing. That's a manufacturing thing, so that you can cure the tire in the curing press, and so the tire doesn't stick to the curing membrane when it's being cured. That's what all that's for. So that's why you've got that foreign material in there. But and that's why you've got the granularity as well to stop it sticking. Because
John, this is Dale again. It's Dale again. I just put new tires on my 69 a couple years ago, and it has wire wheels. And my tire supplier found a tire, and it's the manufacturer's General Tire, and they're made in Brazil, I think. But the interior of the tire is very smooth compared to more modern tires that all have that rib in them.
Okay, General Tire. Okay.
And it's a nice tread, almost like an old style tread. And I use 185/70 14s on that car. But I found that, so there are some tire and that brand Vertestein or whatever it's called, they're smooth on the inside. Okay. So I don't know whether it helps, but I looked for a tire that was smooth on the inside.
Yeah, General Tire makes a number of models of tires. Do you remember which model of General Tire you put on?
It's covered. If you told me the name, I would recognize it, because a bunch of my friends bought the same one. Max something, or I don't know.
So we got two things for next time: the tires and the windscreens.
Could it be General Ultimax?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
General what?
Ultimax.
Yeah, that's the one I have.
And to make those tires handle well, the Ultimax, they will handle well, but you got to put about 45 pounds of air in them.
Oh, I keep 30.
Yeah, they don't. They don't handle real well. I found that out the hard way.
Getting back to the windscreens, my 69 has a windscreen that's different from my 72 in that the outside finish is different. One is kind of like a smooth finish. The other one's like an aluminum finish. So I wonder if the change happened between 69 and 72. We'll research it.
We will.
John, I have a note for Dale. Those little clips for the throwout bearing.
Yeah.
I found that the way to put them on, put throwout bearing in the fork, and there is a slot, an indent on the back side of the fork. You stick the end of the clip into the hole in the end of the throwout bearing, end of the axle or the throwout bearing, and you take a hammer to drive the dang things on.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
sure.
It could be, but I found it too complicated, so I just put on the normal style that I had.
Okay.
And David Knox said that those bearings are all the same, only the clips change apparently between the
Yeah.
Bs and the other cars.
You can
Let me
also
go
put
on
them
to
on the
Mr.
picture.
Snow here, who has a 53 TD. I was told that it has an MGA rear axle. I went to change the rear brake pads and the TD pads were too small. Okay, so chances are you got an MGA diff in there. I'm assuming that I would also have to use MGA drums on the back, correct? MGA drums, I believe, are larger than TDs. Yes, so we go, yes, that, what's the drum size for the TD and the MGA? I don't know, but the MGA ones are bigger. I know that, the same size as a B. I don't know if they go from 11 inches to 12 inches, or I don't remember. 10, the MGB ones are 10, I think. 10 inches? That doesn't seem like it's big enough, but.
10.2.
What's that?
I believe they're 10.2 inches.
Because there's on some of them it's stamped on the inside maximum turning diameter. But anyway, yes, the MGA, if you got an MGA banjo rear axle, that's perfectly fine, works just fine. There's a little more braking that's going to happen in the back than in the front, and the brakes are so specifically designed. There's a difference between an MGB GT rear brake and an MGB Roadster rear brake, because the weight ratio changes, but not much, and they can be used interchangeably without hardly any effect at all. So anyway, I can't tell you, Snow, what size that is, but Bob thinks that the MGB rear and MGA rear drums are 10.2. So, but anyway, they are larger. So, okay, Jennifer Moss has a video on bench testing the generator. Okay, but we already talked about this and got that sorted out. From Mr. Dowler, not a generator question. I'm working on an installation of Bob Betzinger's overdrive toggle flip-flop switch. Descriptions and plans can be found on the St. Louis Club site. I have pretty much figured out most of what needs to be done, but I'm confused as to what resistor is needed and its configuration. Is there anyone here who's installed this mod? And could you walk me through a couple of steps? So I don't understand why you'd have a resistor on the toggle switch. And I don't know, and I haven't heard about this at all. So is anybody else done a resistor in their overdrive wiring? This is interesting. I love wiring, so I don't know what this. There's a Tech Tips part of the St. Louis MG Club. So,
hello there, John. This is Brad. It's Mr. Dowler because I use the same account for my high school students. So,
right.
Basically, it's a switch that turns the overdrive off when it comes out of third and fourth gear, so you don't forget to turn it off and pull up to a light. And then as you go back up through the gears, the overdrive's still on, and you'll lag in third gear.
Well, that's cool. Okay.
So it's just something that maybe it's because of my lack of attention or problem, and I've had a few issues with it before, and I thought that might be something fun to do. Yeah. And he gives a diagram on how to wire it all, but he mentions you put a resistor in a certain spot, but he doesn't mention what resistor. So
let me if Bob Betzinger is often on this on the Zoom with us, but call me tomorrow. I'll try to remember to look at this yet tonight and take a look at it, and maybe it'll make sense to me, and I can give you an answer. You give me a call. I want to look at it anyway, because I sort of understand what's going on here, sort of, and it sounds pretty cool, because that is the frustrating thing when you've got the 68 through 76 MG anyway, all of them. But if you leave an overdrive, you come to the stop, you don't know the switch is still in overdrive, and you start off, and you change up to second, you change up to third, and all of a sudden, and you can feel it going to overdrive, and then instantly your hand goes up and flicks the switch, and then you're back out of overdrive, and it can't be good, all that jerking, So anyway, this is cool. So, Brad, I will give me a call tomorrow, and this is fun. So, oh, look at this, Ed Cook. Yeah, I don't know if Ed's still on or not. Ed says we've got plenty of MGB pedal pads at Abingdon Spares. So thank you very kindly, Ed Cook. So, and Chaz says to everybody that he loves Abingdon Spares. So here we have a charging question. Sometimes charging instructions say you might have to remove the battery to charge it. No. With standard generator setup, is there any reason to disconnect the battery from the car before charging it up? No. And actually it's easier, just open the bonnet and hook up your leads between ground and the bottom fuse and the fuse box. Remember, the more slowly you charge the battery, the better it is. So if you're on a 2 or 3 amp charge, that's fine. The wiring will handle it and everything. So, Judd, we already talked about this, taking your generator and having that sorted out. And from Mark Vittlin, yes, when I say control box, I mean the voltage regulator, yes. Although really, when everyone says the voltage regulator, they really mean the control box, because it isn't just the voltage regulator, it includes the cutout. So those two relays inside that box then become the control box. From Paul, hello all, I have a 77B that another owner installed a GM single wire alternator. The unused wires were simply cut at the entrance to the loom. Oh, I love that. And some are still hot. Yes. Is this bad? Not if they're taped up. What's the easiest remedy? Just tape them up. By the way, this guy claimed to be an electrical engineer. Engineers and mechanics are not that far distant, but once you burn your wiring up from an exposed hot lead, you learn to put the tape on it. So we're getting right down to it. It's at 9:57. It's almost 10 o'clock. We'll go a little bit longer. I said we're going to quit at 10, but let's go a little bit longer. We had 150 people on at one point. Doug Clark is often on, and he's my official counter when he's on.
Well, John, 165. I am on, and I'm wearing my latest pith helmet for you.
I can't,
it's a hard hat version that the guys in the golf course wear when they mow the lawns. So, and it has a chin strap as well. But to answer your question and get off the subject of pith helmets, 165 was the high water mark today, John.
Thank you, Doug. It's very kind. You're very kind. It's hard for me to recognize you sometimes from one month to the next. So yeah, but the pith helmet absolutely gives it away. So anyway, go on my website, push that PayPal button, be kind to me, and help me afford my. I do have costs. I've got costs for PayPal. Excuse me. That's when you're sending me the money. They clip some of it, of course. What I mean to say, I've got costs for Zoom that cost me, Constant Contact cost me, and I have to pay insurance. So that, if I give you bad advice and you go out and your lawyer figures that I've got deep pockets, so anyway, it's I do have some costs here. Don Bueller, I'm hooking up the wipers on a 52 TD. The wiper motor works. Where do you hook up the two wires? One to ground and the other two where? Well, generally you want to have it fused. So generally speaking, you'd bring it round underneath the dash and bring it out and connect it to the green wires, which are the top of the fuse box. This is a what year? 52. So you've got a separate fuse box and a 5-post control box. So the one wire would go to the green circuit at the top two, one of the top two on the fuse box, and the other one goes to ground. So, and here, Rich S. Weighs in and says that the generator control box tests, all that is available on Barney Gaylord's site, mgaguru.com. That's a really nice place. And then we've got another one, Gene Cooper's weighed in here with another place to get tests, and that's at, there's a mg-tabc.org. So it's a website, www.mg-tabc.org. They have a huge site there, and they've got a lot of information. So Chip Riccio says, do alternators have control boxes? Yes. In 1968 only, it's external, and then they put the regulator into the back of the unit. It's underneath the black cover at the back, so it's not a separate device. And then we've got another note about Barney's site. Rich S. Anyone know of a source of reliable solid state voltage regulators? And Judd, did you give us that name before?
Have it, but it's a place in North Carolina, and I don't have it.
Okay. Okay. And Chip says, so I need to take the rotors off to fix the squeaking. Well, he means the calipers. No, you don't have to take the calipers off the car. Take the pads out, and you can only scuff up one side of the brake rotor. You can use a DA, or you can use a sandpaper block with 100 grit sandpaper and sand it until you're sick of sanding it, and that's good enough. And then sand the face of the pads. Just put the 100 grit paper on the floor and rub the pad on top of it, or do it on a tabletop, and then put that duct tape on the back of it. But you can do it right in place. And then Mr. Tatterson has given us a link in chat over to White Post. And they've got their own website, whitepost.com. Scott, everybody, replacing rear axle seals on my 73B. I removed the hubs without any problem. The axle nuts were tight, but not excessively so, but they will be when you put them back on, Scott. All the info I find seems to talk about cars with wire wheels and torquing the nuts to 180 pounds. Is the spec the same for cars with disc wheels? Yes. At the shop, we ran about 100 pounds, sometimes a little more, 110 pounds of airline pressure. And we take our impact guns and impact sockets and just put them on max and just hammer those nuts until we knew that we could not get to the next hole to put a split pin through. Those things want to be really, really tight. And you want to put a little bit of grease on everything, but especially on those splines. You don't put them on the rear axle splines, because then when you push the hub on, it pushes the grease ahead, and that flings out and gets on the shoes. You put the grease on the hub itself, and when you push it over the axle splines, then the excess grease comes out underneath, and you can get that tapered washer in there. So. Greg Fisher, pros and cons to silicone brake fluid. Real brake fluid takes paint off faster than zip strip. Silicone fluid works just fine on lots of cars, but there are occasional weird things with it. You gotta be real careful bleeding it because it'll aerate real quickly, and you just have to wait, come back later. Because you can't, you know, if you got bubbles in the fluid, you just can't, you can't get the pedal rock hard. Silicone brake fluid often leaks when you have your cylinder re-sleeved by White Post Restorations. They tell you we won't guarantee it if you put silicone brake fluid in it because it runs out, it leaks. I don't know, maybe the molecules are smaller, maybe it's slipperier, I don't know, but it leaks past the seals. So the only time that you use silicone brake fluid is when you open up your bonnet and you look under the bonnet and somebody says, when's lunch? I mean, it's got to be like beautiful underneath there. I just did my daughter's car. Everything was beautiful underneath the bonnet. I used silicone fluid. So there's problems on MGAs, midgets, and T-types with swelling the seals, and the brakes come on by themselves. So Greg, if you're still on, you can come back to me tomorrow. And if you have an A or a midget, early tandem master cylinder midget, not 68 or newer, we can talk about that. Greg Poffmarker, classic regulator. And that's a classic regulator at Comcast.net. Anyway, so that's one place for a solid control box, classic regulator. And Nuno from says for solid state regulator, I got one of these so far, and that's dynamoregulatorconversions.com. That's www.dynamoregulatorconversions.com. Oh, let's see, Mike Hogan. I had a battery drain caused by a bad on-off switch capacitor on a BMC AM radio. Yep, pulled current even when the radio was turned off. If you have a modern radio with that saves all the stations that you like, that'll pull current too. Not very much, not enough to light a test light, but enough to draw the battery down if you leave it there for a month or so. And Chuck says, what about a battery switch? That's a real nice thing to add. If you figure that the clutch isn't enough to deter people from stealing your car. Pat G, no ballet in Windsor. Pat, are you still on from Windsor? No ballet in Windsor? Anyway, okay, so Pat also says, I've seen carbon throwout bearings where the carbon comes loose. Yeah, it's not supposed to. If you read the TD workshop manual, they want you to take the old steel housing back into the dealer, and the dealer is supposed to send it back to the manufacturer to have a new piece of, to swedge in a new piece of carbon, a carbon thrust. But some of the carbon throwout bearings, this hasn't been a problem now for a while, but for a little while, there's always a problem someplace. Everybody's problems come up someplace. The headlight rings don't fit, and then they do again. It's just control boxes are crappy, and then they're good again. Anyway, the carbon throwout bearing, that's a really frustrating thing to have go bad. I had a shop in North Carolina. Guy says, I drove my customer car for 200 miles, and he got finally said, okay, you can have it. And he got 5 miles down the road, and the throwout bearing came apart. It's real frustrating. So apparently they're supposed to be good again. So Mark Vittlin says, I got tubes on radials on an MGA that were mounted in the mid 80s, and they're still good. So the tires are still good from the mid 80s. High-end mountain bikes are typically all tubeless now. You can seal wire rims the same way. Can you seal the wire rims the same way you seal without a tube? Yes, that's what David Knox said, and that's how they come from the tubeless ones that you buy, you get half a tube of clear silicone sealant and smear it on the inside where all the spokes come through. And then when the spokes move just a weeny little bit, it's not enough to break the seal, and you can keep the air in there. So another link to the St. Louis Club's overdrive flip-flop switch. Dean Hickenlooper, thanks for fixing Melissa Gonzalez's MGB limited edition at MG 2021. You know, the whole goal, if you've seen me at my rolling tech sessions, the first line is the same as in the medical practice, you know, do no harm. My greatest fear is damaging someone's car or rendering it immobile. And Melissa Gonzalez came through, and I don't even know if I touched her carburetor, but that was enough. And the diaphragm that was in there, which looked like when I took it out, when I took it out, we figured out what was going on. It was crumbling. I mean, that thing was ancient. She'd driven all the way from Chicago to Atlantic City on this nasty old diaphragm. So it sounds like a safe sex ad, but if you have a Stromberg carburetor on your MGA, always carry an extra diaphragm, because you can't buy one. You got to wait a day to have it shipped in. But then,
hey, John,
yeah,
I got a good one for you. So on that diaphragm, I was broke down in the middle of middle of nowhere, and torn diaphragm on my Sunbeam Alpine on the Stromberg carburetors, and late at night. And this was back in late 70s, early 80s. And I called my dad, talked to him about it. We ended up taking a Ziploc plastic bag and putting it in place of the rubber diaphragm, and drove the car home.
So Cecilia from Scarborough Fair said, "Wow, all you need is a rubber glove. Just cut a hole in that." And I mean, these are on the road repairs, but yeah.
I just took a Ziploc baggie and laid it out, put it on, put the screws on it, fired it up, drove it home.
John, the funny part at Atlantic City is when you looked up from under the hood and asked if anybody had a diaphragm for Melissa.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There's always humor. So anyway, hey, we're at 10:12. I think I've run through all these chat sessions. So does anybody have any other questions or comments that we should hit here before I make my last pitch for pushing my PayPal button?
John,
Hey, John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you on your telephone. Yes.
Yes, thank you. This is Adam Lombard over in Southern California MG Club. I've been listening since I got in the car to come home from work, and unfortunately, when I did get home, I couldn't log into the session. It kept rejecting the passcode. But I did want to thank you for the session, and so I'm looking forward to having you come out here and visit. Would love to get together with you when you're out here visiting Barbara. And also, if there's anything she needs done where she needs another pair of hands or some tools and you're out of town, she can always come over here and we can do a remote tech session and you can talk me through whatever she needs.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm going to be there from August 6th, maybe for about 2 weeks. So I'll talk to you. Maybe we can get something to get impromptu or something, or maybe that's when your meeting is and I can come to the meeting or something. So. Great.
And I'd like to just meet you. And
she did say that she'd been in touch with you, so thank you very much.
John, I do have a couple.
We're so happy to have her in the club.
Thanks. Okay.
I have a couple of final comments on the windshield wiper motor, the green wire. There's lots of green wires under there. Gloria went under and traced it out on a 52 TD.
Okay.
Because she's smaller than me. And fortunately found the right one. The other thing about the windshields, replacing them. A few years ago, we called around, needed a windshield replaced, called all these windshield places. We got a price of $1,100, but they wouldn't do it. They won't do it.
And so, in fact, the last one I called, I didn't even, a weird name. And they says, oh yeah, we'll do it. Is that a motorhome? So I hung up. And we did it ourselves, and the insurance company paid us $1,100. We've done 3 of them for a friend, and it's a tough job, but $1,100, that's not enough.
Oh my gosh, getting the windscreen frame off the car is a dream, right? And only if the dash is out is it even remotely not difficult to put it back in the car. There's just no place to clamp it. We'd have 2 or 3 guys all hanging on it and underneath there with hooks trying to draw that thing down. Oh my gosh. You eventually you get the thing done. There's all the tricks, but
the two of us did it, and we've done about 3 of them now, so we've learned how to do it. It's still not a fun job.
Get those GM bolts.
Oh yeah, and there's bolts. I had the number somewhere. The GM bolts with a pointy end on them.
Yeah.
I got the number for that, and I ordered a bag, and they're much easier to put in with that.
Okay. Than the normal factory bolts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They got a pretty good point on them, and
Because you can get it near instead of exact.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I tell people. I said, make sure the point is really sharp, and chase those 3/8 18 threads, and chamfer all those tricks that you do, but it still has to do with getting it down and into place.
It's a strange thing, though. The older you get, the harder it is. I don't understand that.
Yeah, strange thing.
Yeah.
Strange thing.
But thanks, John, for everything. These sessions are great.
You're very welcome. I haven't put very many of them apparently up on YouTube. I keep getting people say, oh, I missed the session, and how can I watch it? And I said, well, just go on YouTube. And then of course that would require that I actually put the sessions onto YouTube, which I haven't for a while. So I got some of my work cut out for me tomorrow. So what else? We got some people from California. Thank you very much. That's real nice. Adam's on, and David Knock, and somebody's from Vancouver, BC, and so that's nice. I wanted to kick the time. So anyway, and we've got some Mr. Brainsky. If that piston gets stiff, the piston won't drop. Yeah, that's true. If that diaphragm is 220, it's a part number on that, David, 224610, factory part number for the MGB diaphragm. I can't remember. You don't do parts. You just do the
PLM number.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, they come in all different thicknesses depending on the manufacturer. And I always figure the thicker ones are better, but if they're too old,
There's a Triumph one for I think it's the late TR4 or 250. It's got a metal ring on the outside.
Really?
Yep. So when on the outside where it fits in the groove on the body of the distributor, it's got a metal ring inside the rubber.
Oh my gosh. So those are like $15 instead of $5 or something.
Yeah, I don't.
Interesting.
No
Okay, well, anyway, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight. And it's a pleasure. We'll have our next one up on I don't know, I can't tell. If today is the 12th and we add 14 to it, it sounds like about the 26th, right? Around there. But anyway, it's two Tuesdays from now. So our counter, Doug Clark, said we had 150 people on tonight at the peak. That's really nice.
165, John, 165.
165.
Don't shortchange yourself, man.
All right, 165. All right. And I know we had Rodolfo on from Mexico, and we had the Canadian guys. I don't know if we had anybody else from any outside the United States, but it's always a pleasure. And I don't think Keith Ansel ever did get on to talk about PIR in the Portland meet, but next time he will. I'm sure we will. And I keep talking about in my letter that I send out, I keep talking about Art Lewis. I mean, you've seen badges on the front of cars. Well, Art's got a lot of badges. Oh my God. If you were at MG 2021, he had them on display, and he's got another dozen now for having been there or something. It's a really impressive display from MG Car Club badges from 1930 through all these different MG Car Club groups. It's amazing. So, but we can't do it live. We're going to have to video it and put it up. And anyway, we'll try that coming up soon. So anyway, I just want to say thank you for everybody for being here. Barney's almost always on, but tonight we had David, somebody else in the trade, somebody to call me out on when I'm giving wrong information. So.
Yeah, I'm on here tonight, John.
Oh, Barney, you are there. Hey, great. Okay.
I got a little late, came and went and had a bad signal for a while, but I'm here.
So be sure, all this generator starter stuff, generator regulator stuff, Barney's got a lot of stuff on his site. I assume not only the factory stuff, but other stuff too. There's the stuff that is on from Moss, and then that MG-TABC site has also got stuff on it. So in the end, it's really difficult to make a control box that's not working work. I don't know why. Maybe the bobbins probably on the inside. I don't know. The big windings you see on the outside, those are easy, but there's windings on the inside of both of them. I don't know if those go bad. Maybe, if you got all the time in the world, you can take them apart and clean them up and put them back together and get all those mechanical specs done, and then do the tests and get them all adjusted. So anyway, Jeff Zorn. Is that Jeff Zorn on tonight?
Yes, it is.
Hey, are you from Florida tonight?
Oh, yeah. Always.
Okay, so Jeff Zorn is Little British Car Company. Lots of you buy your parts through Jeff. So Jeff, thanks for being on tonight.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And Ed Cook was on tonight from Abingdon Spares. Sean English I see is on, or I don't see Sean, but I see his name up here. So he's going into another room. Here I am talking about him. My grandfather listened to the Tigers. He was, 90 years old. And he listened to the Detroit Tigers his whole life. I don't know why. They weren't winning then either. But he just loved it. And he listened to Ernie Harwell. And somebody in the family contacted Ernie Harwell, and they said, please acknowledge, my dad or my grandfather's birthday, his 90th birthday. So sure enough, Ernie Harwell said, happy 90th birthday to Harold Brooks in Marshall, Michigan. But my grandfather always turned the volume down when the game wasn't going on, so he never heard it. So Sean's gone in the other room here, but I'll be down at Sean's house when I'm in DC in October. So anyway, until later, gentlemen, ladies, thank you very kindly for being here, and we will tune in again 2 weeks from now with some answers about windscreens. What was the other thing we're gonna? Oh, and the resistor on the flipper switch for the overdrive. That's real interesting. So anyway, you can unmute yourself. We'll say goodbye here in mass for a couple of minutes.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Great, always.
Cheers, John.
Tony,
Thank you, John.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks for counting. Barney, thanks for being here.
Thanks, John.
Yep. And Tom Snook, thanks for being here. I always see you on here, so thanks very much. And Alan Batchelder, thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting me. And Alan's the head of the Magnet group, The Mighty no, it's the Mighty MGCs. What do you call them, Alan? The Mighty Magnets? That's alliteration, isn't it? Oh, you're muted, Alan. You got to unmute yourself, Alan.
There we go. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the Z Magnet Group of North America. And let me know if you have a magnet or if you want to join us. We'd love to have you. And John, I was just in your territory last weekend at the Mad Dogs and Englishmen. And
I would have been there. I wanted to set up a vending table and just to see everybody. I don't have anything to sell, but I was going to set up a vending table. But I had a family obligation on that day, and family always takes precedence. So,
yeah. My son and my two granddaughters came up from Cincinnati to meet me at that show. We had a great time, a lot of fun. My granddaughters and I built a valve cover racer, and my old 73 BGT won second in class. I couldn't believe it. I haven't touched that. Well, I cosmetically haven't touched that car in 16 years.
Oh my gosh.
Had a lot of fun.
All right. So you can find Alan, Alan Batchelder if you get a magnet. So
yes.
Anyway, thanks very much everybody for being here. Peter R., my brother-in-law's brother-in-law, and yeah. So anyway, Bob and Gloria.
Say hi to your brother-in-law.
Yeah,
I will. So all right. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you very kindly.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
John.
John, and
Cheers.
good night, everyone. Yes. Good night.
Adios.
Adios.